Hello, 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 and good evening to everybody tuning in. Welcome to Homebuyer Academy Live. I'm your host, Chad Murray, and I am excited to be here with you today so we can talk about all of the steps that you can take to make home ownership a reality for you in the near future. So, unfortunately, our co host, Maurice Jones, isn't able to join us. He's out doing daddy duties, but he sends his love. So today, what we want to do is again take a moment. I don't know about you. Today is a heck of a day, fam. What a day. I ain't forget that. Right, babe? My wife would tell you today was one heck of a day. But anyway, we're blessed, we're here. So let's just take a moment to really just get grounded and get connected to this moment. And how I like to do that is to take a moment in gratitude. So, if you can, just in the chat, just leave one thing that you're grateful for today. So that as we get started, we get connected to what's possible. We start off our moment with gratitude. Uh, and for me, whew, I am grateful for forgiveness. Yeah. 'Cause I be wanting to, yeah, but then catch myself and just say, yo, just let it slide. So I'm grateful for forgiveness. So and if you can, let me see what you got in the chat. Maurice is still moderating tonight, so if you see anything, go ahead and put it up there. But go ahead as we go through this, please like, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend. Anything that we share that can help somebody else, feel free to share it because the more we get this message out, the more empowered the community becomes. Uh, so tonight, what we're talking about is taking that leap from the first home to the second home. That's really a topic that came up for me because I spoke at the Route 7 Orlando speaker series last week, and there were a lot of homeowners in the crowd, and I wanted to make sure to tailor the message to brothers so that they could still benefit. Now, a lot of the principles that you need to buy your first house, you're going to need for your second home. But what I'm going to be talking about today is a specific loan program that makes real estate opportunities more available and accessible. Now, first and foremost, when we talk about purchasing a house, there are a lot of misconceptions about what it's actually going to take, how strong your credit has to be, how much money you have to make, how much money you have to put down. Just to put all of that to bed, you could get a house as low as a 580 credit score. So that means that you don't have to have great credit at all. You just have to show consistency in payments. 580 scores would maybe, if you have utilization as your issue more than late payments as your issue, can still get you through. What I mean by that is if you have a 580 and your credit is just smashed, like you have late payments and collections galore, that's still going to stop you from being able to bypass what they call desktop underwriting's algorithm that's going to get you through to the next phase. But there are people that have the 580 score that don't necessarily have a ton of collections or a lot of late payments, maybe one or two here and there, but their major challenge is utilization. We could get you through. So 580 minimum FICO score. That's for an FHA mortgage. For a VA mortgage, there is no minimum credit score, but they're still going to be looking for cleanliness of credit, so to speak. The next phase is down payment. You don't need 20% down. That is a huge misconception that don't live here no more. The reality is that you could get a home with as little as a 3% down on some conventional mortgage products and 3.5% down on FHA mortgages. More commonly for conventional products, it's 5% down. And that's, of course, based on the income you make based on the area median income in your area. So 5% is going to be the standard, and it could go as low as 3% for a conventional mortgage. And lastly, uh, you don't need to make all the money in the world. Generally speaking, for a house that is 300,000 without a car loan, you could probably squeak by with minimal debt if you make a total of 65,000, maybe a little bit less. but the more income, the merrier. But I just wanted to throw those few things out there so that you could see that what we're talking about is totally, totally attainable. It's not a far-fetched dream that you have of home ownership. It's really something that is a matter of process if you understand where you're going and how to get there. All right. So those are the key things when you're looking to buy your first home. And we're going to keep on talking about different phases of the journey. We're going to be interviewing different real estate professionals or different people involved in the home buying process so that you could actually make that a reality, right? But for tonight, what I wanted to do is I wanted to tap into some of the resources. In particular, like I said before, there's a particular loan program that can help you take that jump from your first house to your second house. All right. And that means tonight we're talking about second mortgages. I'm sorry, second home mortgages. All right. Not a second mortgage, meaning that you have a house with one mortgage and then you get like a second mortgage on top of it in second position. So, the first mortgage might be 80% and the second mortgage might be 10. No, we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is if you have a home and you have a home loan and you're looking to get another house, you can get what's called a second mortgage, a second home mortgage. All right. And with the second home mortgage, what that means is you are now buying your vacation home or a second home that you're going to have some kind of personal use for. And this piece is very, very important. For a second home mortgage, you need to be able to prove that you're going to have some personal use for that home. So, what I want to have you see is that in real estate, there's a lot of room for interpretation, and we have to make sure that we stay above that line, that we do things the right way. Um, but getting a second home mortgage, what that makes possible is for you to get that second loan, and it won't be considered an investment, right? Because with an investment property, let's say you own one house and you're buying another house. When you're buying that second house and your intention is to rent it out with a traditional lease, we can use that proposed rental lease to qualify your income for that second that investment property. Now, a program like that would require 25 or 30% down for you to be able to move forward. And in some cases, as low as 20% down. But what I'm talking about is a home loan that is going to be separate and apart from the property that you own, but not quite an investment property. So the downside of it is that you're going to actually have to put a lot more income on paper to show that you can qualify for this, because you're going to have to be able to prove that you can qualify debt to income ratio wise for your current mortgage and this new mortgage. This is why this is the biggest challenge, right? But if you're able to bypass that challenge, here's what comes possible, right? Key detail: you do absolutely have to have some form of personal use. So, what that means is either you're going to be vacationing at this property at some point, or you're going to be spending some time of some kind of personal time there, or having it for personal use. Boom. So, let's go into that. What does that leave available for you? So, if you're looking to take that next step and you want to buy that next house and you're thinking about renting, but you've heard about something called like Airbnb, hmm, how do we make this work? Now, the beauty of an Airbnb is that it's short-term rental. So, yes, you would want to buy a property in an area or look for a property that's first and foremost at least 50 miles from where you live, right? Because it's hard to justify you buying your second home in the same neighborhood. That don't make no sense. And no lender is going to really buy into that. So, we want to go out the gate understanding that you're going to look for a house that's a good distance from where you currently live. But now let's say that you live in one place, but the place 50 miles away is near a beach. What's possible is for you to be able to use that property, buy it as a second home mortgage, and then use it as a short-term rental opportunity that you and your family also get to use at some point during the year. But why is this such a game changer? Why am I emphasizing this? Why wouldn't somebody just go for an investment to do it that way so that it's super clear? Well, because as I said before, with an investment mortgage, you're going to actually have a few negative elements that join you on that investment property. First off, a higher down payment. So, like I said, you can get it with a 30%, 25%, and there are less options, but possibly 20%, right? You have to have amazing credit, and all of the circumstances have to work in your favor to get through at 20%. But for the most part, standard is 25 and above. Also, you're going to end up with a higher interest rate than the general normal market, right? But when you're buying a second home mortgage, what you'll be able to do is get an interest rate that's probably going to be less than a half to a whole percentage point higher than what your traditional mortgage would be. So the variance isn't that huge. You're not going to be paying that much more in interest compared to um, what you're going to be paying for your home. But here's another cool thing about it: you only have to put down 10%, which is a huge game changer. And I'm going to break it down even further. You're only putting down 10%. So let's look at these numbers, right? Compared to you having to put down about 75,000 on a $300,000 house, you're only putting down $30,000. So that's less than half of that amount for you to get into the game of buying your second home. Now, not only that, but with the second home mortgage, there's no PMI. So you won't be paying mortgage insurance either. So you're going to be in a position that now you're putting down 10%. Now, if you were to do that on a if you were to do that on a FHA or even a conventional mortgage, you'd have to pay mortgage insurance, right? In this case, you don't. In addition to that, the interest rate being lower, lower down payment, no mortgage insurance, it gives you an opportunity to actually now get into an investment space. Now, again, you do have to keep this property for personal use to a degree, but personal use is flexible. So, first off, let's look at short term rental markets. Now, the short term rental market is still very hot. As a matter of fact, there has just been a shift in how people vacation. Hotels aren't just a matter of fact anymore. This is a whole new lifestyle that I can't foresee changing, just because it makes so much more sense and it gives so much more options in terms of how you could navigate your vacation or your staycation or your getaway. So, with that being said, it is a very strong market. And oftentimes you're able to get 1.5 times to 2 times market rent with shorter occupancy timeframes on vacation rentals to be able to go ahead and get into the Airbnb or Verbo or just that short term rental market. And when we say short term rental, those are just a few options. I actually have a cousin, she's brilliant, and she actually rents out uh, her place to stewardesses and pilots near airports, right? So now as they come in, they come through to her crash pad. And that's a short-term rental possibility that you can do with a second home mortgage. So really what I want to emphasize tonight is there's a big mystique around the first house, but an even bigger one around the second house. With the second house, people have been totally and thoroughly convinced that you have to put down 25% down or there's no party. It's not true. This is a nice little loophole that gives you an opportunity to get into a very good entryway to uh, becoming a landlord. Because when you actually go and you rent out a house to a tenant, if you're not really versed in screening tenants and understanding what to look for and understanding what are the pros and the cons and how to go about doing that, you could end up renting your house to somebody that could be a total and absolute nightmare. With the short-term rental game, of course, you've heard some of the nightmares that comes with that game. You know, people throwing parties and things getting wild, and that can happen. By all means, it can happen. I've actually owned a Airbnb, and it was a good experience for about 3 years until we actually sold that property. And the truth of the matter is, at a point, if you decide that, you know what, um, I want to be able to get into an investment that's going to be low maintenance, hands free, passive, this is a fairly passive investment. Now, you can choose to manage an Airbnb by yourself. And that could be like a whole nother job. There's nothing passive about that. But you can hire a management company and they charge generally anywhere from 15 to 20% on an Airbnb. But again, keep in mind, if you're making uh, 1.5 to 2 times the area rent for Airbnb, it makes sense to make that investment so that you buy yourself the peace of mind. Because with that 20%, you're not cleaning up. You're not worrying about booking anybody. You're not worrying about your phone going off all hours of the night because people are hitting you up on the Airbnb app. So that's something to consider when you're trying to make that transition from having that first house to a second. The beauty of it is that you don't have to be in a position that you got to give up so much money to get started. 10% is definitely a strong, strong amount to be able to invest. But comparing that to 25% or more, it really, really allows you to be able to step into real estate investing in a lot more of a better leveraged way. And I want to be very careful when I say real estate investing because, yes, Airbnb is a form of investing. It definitely is. But it still allows you to live within that nuance of personal use. And you only need about 15 to 20 days of personal use. So that means that you could use that for vacation time. You could use that to have a meeting in the house. You could use those days in different ways. Even you could even use it for storage. And if you were to use, let's say, the garage for storage, that counts, right? So you want to just put it in a position that you cover yourself. Now, a lot of the times, banks aren't messing with you if you make your payments and you do the right thing generally. But you still want to make sure that you start with the plan so that you could follow through with what the law says and what it's supposed to be. And law is a rough word, but still, you want to do the right thing so that you don't put yourself in hot water. Like, I wouldn't recommend getting a second home mortgage to now turn around and do a 2 year lease because there's no getting around that. You signed a 2 year lease. The lease is on paper. It is what it is. You're not going to be living there at any point. No way, no shade, no form. So this is a great win-win if you're looking to graduate into owning multiple properties without you having to carry the whole burden by yourself. So that's just one thing I wanted to share tonight because I do think it is so valuable for us to understand what it takes to get into the first house. But I also want you to keep your eye on the prize in the second and the third and the fourth house. Because the more you're able to build and the more you're able to do it in a way that fits your lifestyle and fit your finances, the better. Because the last thing you want to do is to buy a house that you end up foreclosing on. Because then you've actually gone up to go even further down than you've started, right? Because then you would have lost your investment, you lose your credit, and now you lose your money. So now that's like a triple swing and miss. It's like striking out with one pitch. But if you do it in a way where first and foremost, any kind of avenue, you want to do your due diligence, whether that's buying your first house, your second, first apartment building, or anything else like that. Take your time to do your diligence, your due diligence. And one great website for you to research the Airbnb or the short-term rental market is called Air DNA. So if that's something that's of interest to you that you're considering stepping out and looking into a new level for yourself, do the research. Get an account with AirDNA because what you'll be able to do there is you'll be able to see what the trends are for short-term rentals in a particular area. You'll be able to see what the daily average rent is for a particular area and how many days those properties are generally booked. So then you could start to do your numbers and look throughout the whole calendar for the year so that you could project when are going to be your high seasons, when are going to be your slow seasons, because you're going to find that it's slightly different in different markets. Of course, when we talk about spring break or summertime, if you're in a warm climate, you're going to get a rush. But there are other areas that might be in a near snow mountains, right? Or snow mountains, right? That might not be like in the Poconos, or where there are different kind of activities that are available. At that point, you want to just know what your market is and when the hot times are, so that you could be prepared for when those times arise. All right. So that's my little piece for tonight. I wanted to share that with you because this could be a very, very powerful way for you to go into the next phase of your real estate ownership. Once you get that first house, moving on to the second home using this mortgage that only requires 10% down. It's a very favorable loan product, and it could really work in your favor for you to take that next step. So if you do have any questions and you want to learn more about it, feel free to reach out to me. You can go to www.chadthelender.com and schedule an appointment. Schedule a 30-minute consultation, and we'll go through all of the details to make sure that you're able to move forward in an empowered way. If you have any questions, or you like anything that I've said, or you disagree with anything that I've said, go ahead and leave it in the comments. Go ahead and leave it in the comments, and I'll definitely reply back, and we'll go ahead and discuss the matter even further. But I hope that this serves you. I hope that you understand that this isn't something that's beyond you or above you. It's something that you can do with proper planning and preparation. So I pray that you do get there in due time. All right. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It's my pleasure and honor to be able to serve, and I'll catch you on the other side.